Hola y bienvenidos a la unidad 9, lección 91A, el verbo imperfecto del pasado. ¿Qué necesitas? Necesitas el paquete de la unidad 9, fichas y algo con que escribir, un lápiz o bolígrafo. Como siempre, si no tienes todo, pausa el video y recoge lo que necesitas. Es una actividad pareja opcional. Learning targets. I can name the 6 verb endings for AR, ER, IR verbs in the imperfect tense. I can apply the 2 steps to conjugate regular and irregular verbs in the imperfect tense. And I can name the 3 irregular verbs and their conjugations for the imperfect tenses. El verbo de hoy es detallar, to describe in detail. Y la cita dice, el pasado no desaparece, le gusta esconderse en la música, en las calles, en los sueños y en los recuerdos. The past doesn't disappear, it likes to hide itself in music and streets and dreams and memories.
Okay, as always, remember if you lose your packet, you have access to your resource sheet. Today we're working on the imperfect conjugation chart. If you haven't already done so, pause the video to take your self-assessment before you begin this lesson. All right, so on your first sheet of your packet, you have this exact same chart up at the top. I want you to add the part in pink. Pause the video, add the part in pink. The imperfect tense is equal to, in English, when we say used to verb, I used to go to my grandma's house. I used to travel to Mexico. Or was verbing. I was speaking. I was running. I was eating. The imperfect tense endings, well, let me go to the next slide here. So the process of conjugation is just like most of the verbs that we have done this year. We've got 2 steps. We're going to cut off the AR, ER, IR, and then we're going to put on the ending, the correct ending for our subject. So what are our endings for AR verbs? Aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. Notice that nosotros has the tilde on the a. For our ER and IR verbs, ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. They share the same set of conjugations, and these should sound familiar. These were the endings for our conditional tense. Would, could, should. Well, Mr. Flack, how do we know if they're the same endings, whether we're using the conditional tense or the imperfect tense? If you remember, the conditional tense adds the endings to the infinitive. Here, we're cutting off the ER or the IR and adding it to the stem. So that's how we know the difference. The verb will be completely different. Instead of comería, we're going to have comía, for example. Also notice that every single ending has a tilde on the I. So for your imperfect, you're going to have tildes on all your ER, IR verbs. And the really cool thing is at the bottom of your page, down here at the bottom, sorry, green screen not working very good. Can't see. Here at the bottom, you have the same chart. These are the only irregulars. There's only 3. As always, you must memorize your irregular verbs, but with only 3, it should be pretty easy to do. So we've got the verb ser, which means to be. Era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Again, tilde on the nosotros. The verb ir, which means to go. Iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. Again, tilde on the I for nosotros. And the verb ver, to see. Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Tildes on the I. That's it. Super, super easy. This is the easiest of all the tenses. Just got to get your endings memorized. So on the next lesson, you're going to go to Spanish Dictionary and do just some basic conjugation practice. But for today, I'm going to get us started thinking about, well, Mr. Flack, you taught us one past tense called the preterite, and now you're teaching us a second past tense called the imperfect. Why are there two? When do we use one versus the other? So we're going to spend quite a bit of time working on this, but today we're going to do just the very, very basics. So you get to start to get used to the imperfect endings and remembering your preterite tense endings all in one activity. So we're going to be working on the back side. You've got your chart on the front. On the back is lesson 91A, says 91A up here in the corner. And we're going to be working on these two sets of practice sentences. So you're going to choose whether the sentence is calling for the preterite or in the imperfect based off this info on the screen. So you might want to write this down at the bottom here where you have some extra space here at the bottom. Okay, preterite tense. Remember I told you, and you wrote hopefully on your sheet, that the preterite is equal to verbed in English. So for example, talked, walked, baked, cooked. But remember, there's a whole bunch of irregulars in the preterite tense in English. For example, we don't say runded, I ran. We don't say bayed, we say bought. But all of that is the preterite tense. The preterite tense in general represents actions in the past with a defined beginning and end. You can also think of these as things that if we're telling a story and we take all the details away, that the part that's left is what moves us forward. Kind of like the last activity I had you do for the preterite tense. First, I woke up. Then I got dressed. Then I ate breakfast. I ran to the store. I bought milk. I returned home. Very boring story. We don't have any details, but we've got all the actions that move us forward. The imperfect tense is what gives us the details. So again, the imperfect is equal to English when we say used to verb or was verbing. This represents actions in the past that were ongoing. I was eating, I was running, I was buying. Or that were habitual and repetitive. I used to go to grandma's house. I used to spend summers on the beach. All right, so with that information now, you're going to do the activity on the worksheet 91A. And when you are finished, check your work with me before moving on. All right, we'll see you next lesson. Adios.